It's hard to picture country music without Alan Jackson. For more than 3 decades, his songs were the heartbeat of small towns and quiet highways, the soundtrack of both heartbreak and celebration. He wasn't just another country singer, he was the voice of real life in the South. But today, that same voice is beginning to fade from the stage, and for the first time in his long career, Alan is saying goodbye. The news has left fans stunned. After years of speculation, he finally opened up about the silent battle that's been changing his life behind the scenes, a rare neurological condition that's been slowly taking away the very thing that defined him, his ability to move, perform, and stand tall under the spotlight. But before we get to that heartbreaking chapter, we need to go back to the beginning of a man who built everything from nothing and who still managed to do it his way. Alan Jackson's story doesn't start with fame, glitz, or Nashville. It starts in a small town in Georgia, where a young boy dreamed of music while living in a simple home built around love and hard work. Born in 1958 in Noonan, Georgia, Alan grew up in a family that didn't have much, but they had what mattered: a sense of faith, honesty, and roots that would later shape every word he sang. In his early years, Alan wasn't chasing the spotlight. He worked odd jobs, drove trucks, and spent most of his free time writing songs that would one day define a generation. His wife Denise was the one who first believed he could make it. She was his high school sweetheart, and even after marrying him young, she never stopped pushing him to chase that impossible dream. It was Denise who famously handed his demo tape to Glenn Campbell, who helped Alan get his first real shot in Nashville. And once that door opened, Alan Jackson didn't just walk through it, he stormed it. By the late 80s, he had signed with Arista Nashville and released his debut album, Here in the Real World. That record didn't just make him a star, it set the tone for everything he stood for. While the rest of the industry leaned toward pop country, Alan brought back the twang, the steel guitars, and the storytelling that felt like home. Songs like Chasin' That Neon Rainbow and Wanted painted vivid pictures of small-town dreams and quiet struggles, stories people could actually relate to. Fans saw something in him that country music had been missing: authenticity. He wasn't trying to be flashy, he wasn't chasing fame. He was just being Alan, a simple man with a guitar, a deep voice, and a heart full of stories. Through the 90s, his success exploded. Hits like Don't Rock the Jukebox, Chattahoochee, and Livin' on Love made him one of the most recognizable names in country music history. His songs weren't just chart toppers, they were cultural moments. People didn't just listen to Alan Jackson, they felt him. His lyrics had a way of turning everyday life into poetry, but even during those golden years, the fame never really changed him. Alan remained humble, grounded, and loyal to his roots. He stayed married to Denise, raised 3 daughters, and kept his private life away from the chaos of celebrity culture. He was the definition of traditional, and fans loved him for that. Yet behind the calm, quiet exterior of that Southern gentleman was a man who pushed himself harder than anyone knew. Endless touring, constant pressure, and the grind of keeping country music real took its toll, but Alan never complained. Not once. He just kept showing up, night after night, like the professional he was. And maybe that's why what happened next hit fans so hard. Because when Alan Jackson, the man who had never slowed down, finally revealed what he'd been fighting all along, it wasn't just shocking, it was heartbreaking. For years, Alan Jackson stood tall under the spotlight, hat tilted low, guitar in hand, and that calm smile that made it seem like nothing in the world could shake him. But while fans saw confidence, Alan was quietly fighting something his audience couldn't see. A slow, invisible battle that was starting to steal his balance, his coordination, and eventually, his ability to perform. Back in 2011, doctors gave Alan the news that would quietly change the rest of his life. He had been diagnosed with Charcot-Marie tooth disease, or CMT, a rare hereditary neurological disorder that affects the nerves in the arms and legs. It isn't life-threatening, but it is progressive, meaning it only gets worse over time. For a man whose career depended on movement, rhythm, and presence, that diagnosis was devastating. Still, Alan did what Alan always did. He kept it to himself. He didn't want pity. He didn't want headlines. He just wanted to keep playing. For nearly 10 years, he carried that secret while continuing to perform hundreds of shows across the country. But behind closed doors, it was getting harder. He began to stumble more often, sometimes losing balance mid-performance. He noticed it first in his legs, then in his hands. The simplest things: stepping up onto a stage, holding his guitar, standing for long sets, slowly became harder to control. Alan later admitted that the disease was getting more and more obvious, and fans began to notice it too. During one concert, he visibly struggled to keep his footing, and though he laughed it off, those close to him could see the frustration in his eyes. The man who once dominated arenas was suddenly trapped inside a body that refused to cooperate. It's hard to imagine how that must have felt, to stand in front of thousands of people who adore you, and to know your body might fail you at any moment. If you've ever watched someone you admire slowly lose the thing that defines them, you understand how heavy that is. That's what Alan Jackson was living with every single night. By 2021, he couldn't keep the secret anymore. In a heartfelt interview, Alan finally revealed his diagnosis to the public. He explained that he had been struggling with CMT for years, and that it was beginning to affect not just his shows, but his everyday life. He spoke about it the way he speaks about everything. Humbly, honestly, without drama. "It's not going to kill me," he said softly, "but it's been affecting me for years. I've known about it, and it's getting more and more obvious." The honesty stunned fans. There was no carefully crafted PR statement, no press tour, just Alan, opening up in his own words, admitting that even country legends aren't immune to time or illness. What made it even more emotional was how he handled it. He didn't turn it into a farewell immediately. He didn't announce retirement on the spot. Instead, he promised to keep performing as long as he could, saying that music was a part of who he was, something he couldn't just walk away from. In that moment, fans realized this wasn't just a diagnosis, it was a countdown. The disease wouldn't silence him overnight, but it would slowly take away the life he'd built around performing. And Alan Jackson knew it. Still, he carried on, determined to finish what he started. The result would become one of the most emotional tours in country music history. When Alan Jackson finally revealed his diagnosis, fans hoped it wouldn't mean the end of his time on stage, but deep down, many knew what was coming. The disease wasn't just affecting his balance, it was reshaping his entire relationship with music. After 4 decades of constant touring, he began to realize that his body simply couldn't handle the demands anymore. He had spent most of his life moving from city to city, night after night, bringing joy to millions, but now, every performance came with a silent question: can I still do this the way I want to? In 2022, Alan announced something that sent a wave of emotion through the country music world. His last call, One More for the Road Tour. It wasn't just a clever name, it was exactly what it sounded like. This was his farewell to the road, to the fans, to the life he'd built one song at a time. Crowds turned up in record numbers, knowing this might be their final chance to see him live. Each show felt more personal than the last. There were no flashy effects, no over-the-top moments, just Alan, his band, and a heart full of memories. He would joke with the crowd, smile through the pain, and perform with the same quiet grace that had defined his career. But if you looked closely, you could see the change. His movements were slower, his stance more cautious. Still, the music never lost its soul. In interviews, he admitted the reality. "It's been tough," he said. "I just can't stand up there and do what I used to do. I don't like to show it, but it's there." Fans could hear it in his voice, that mix of acceptance and heartbreak that comes when you're forced to let go of something you love. By 2025, Alan's farewell journey reached its emotional peak. His final tour stop in Milwaukee was more than a concert. It was a celebration of a lifetime. People traveled from all over the country to witness it, singing along to every lyric, tears streaming down faces as the night went on. When the last note faded, the crowd stood in silence, knowing they had just witnessed history, but even that wasn't the end. In October 2025, Alan announced what would truly mark his final goodbye: one last concert, set for June 27, 2026, at Nissan Stadium in Nashville. This wasn't just a performance, it was a homecoming. The city that had launched his career decades earlier would now host his final bow. Alan promised that the event would be more than a concert. It would be a night filled with memories, family, and friends. Fellow artists were already planning to join him on stage. And in a move that showed his heart was still in the right place, a portion of the proceeds would go toward research for Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, the very illness he's been battling all these years. That announcement hit fans hard. It wasn't just that he was leaving, it was how he was leaving. With dignity, with humility, with love for the people who carried him this far. Alan Jackson wasn't fading out quietly. He was giving the world one final reason to remember him at his best. And yet, behind every smile, there was an unspoken truth. A man learning to live with the reality that his days under the bright lights were numbered. Still, this wasn't the end of Alan Jackson's story. If anything, it was the moment that revealed who he truly was when the spotlight started to dim. Away from the noise of the crowds and the flashing lights, Alan Jackson is a simple man. Always has been. But fame never changed the fact that he'd rather be home in Tennessee than anywhere else in the world. And that's exactly where his heart is now, at home. Alan and his wife Denise have been together since they were teenagers. They married young, built a life out of nothing, and somehow stayed strong through decades of fame, family, and pressure. In an industry where relationships often collapse under the spotlight, theirs endured, not perfectly, but honestly. They raised 3 daughters, built a family full of love and laughter, and more recently welcomed their first grandchild. When Alan talks about Denise, it's always with a kind of quiet gratitude. She was there when he was broke, when he was unknown, when his songs were still just dreams scribbled in notebooks. She was the one who believed before anyone else did, and now she's the one helping him slow down, reminding him that it's okay to let go. In a rare moment of openness, Alan once said, "I'm just getting into my twilight years. I enjoy spending more time at home. I don't tour as much anymore. It's where I feel peace." That's where the shift happened. The man who had spent his entire adult life chasing the next show, the next crowd, was finally realizing that home was the stage that mattered most. These days, his focus isn't on set lists or ticket sales. It's on family dinners, time with his daughters, and watching his grandchild grow. He's learning to enjoy the quiet moments, the ones that fame can never buy. To most people, slowing down feels like giving up, but for Alan, it feels like finally breathing. He's admitted that one of the hardest parts of his diagnosis wasn't the physical pain, it was accepting that the lifestyle he loved might be over. The constant motion, the adrenaline of the stage, the energy from the fans, it had been his entire identity, and walking away from that isn't easy for anyone, especially for a man who built his world around it. But when you listen to him talk now, you can tell he's finding peace in the change. He's not bitter, he's not angry, he's reflective, grateful for the life he's had, but ready to enjoy the one that's left. He often says that music will always be a part of him, but that doesn't mean it has to be everything, and maybe that's the real meaning behind his goodbye. It's not just about stepping off the stage, it's about stepping into a new chapter, one where life doesn't revolve around applause, but around love, legacy, and the people who've been there from the very start. As one of his close friends put it, Alan's not quitting, he's just changing the rhythm. Alan Jackson's career isn't just a collection of hit songs, it's a blueprint for what country music once was, and what it still strives to be. His legacy stretches far beyond charts and awards. It's in the hearts of people who grew up hearing his voice on old car radios, in honky-tonk bars, and at backyard barbecues. He never tried to reinvent himself to fit a trend. While others chased whatever sound was hot that year, Alan stayed rooted in something timeless, storytelling. His music wasn't about image, it was about truth. Every lyric, every melody carried a piece of real life. From the highs of Chattahoochee to the heartbreak of Remember When, his songs became emotional landmarks for millions. Even as modern country drifted toward pop influences, Alan stood firm. He once said, "The old stuff had heart. It was about real people. That's what I want to keep alive." That quiet rebellion, staying true to his sound while the world changed around him, is part of what made him a legend. Over the years, the industry recognized that too. Alan Jackson became one of the most awarded artists in country music history, a member of the Country Music Hall of Fame, a Grammy winner, and the first recipient of the Alan Jackson Lifetime Achievement Award at the 2025 ACM Awards. That award didn't just honor his hits, it honored his integrity. His name is now literally attached to a standard of excellence, something few artists ever achieve. But if you ask Alan, awards were never the point. He said it himself, "I'm proud of the trophies, sure, but I'd trade them all for one more night on stage, where I can sing and feel that crowd." That line sums him up better than any plaque on a wall ever could. Even as his touring life fades, his influence keeps spreading. Newer country artists constantly name him as their inspiration. They grew up listening to his music, learning how to tell stories that felt real. You can hear echoes of Alan Jackson in the voices of countless singers who came after him. And now, as he prepares for that one final concert in Nashville, it's not just about nostalgia, it's about legacy, closing the loop where it all began. The Nissan Stadium event on June 27, 2026, is shaping up to be a full-circle moment. Fans will gather to celebrate not just the man, but the movement he started, the return to honesty, simplicity, and storytelling in music. Alan has hinted that he may still write songs or record in the studio when he feels up to it. "I'll always be around music," he said recently. "I just won't be living out of a suitcase anymore." Those words carry a mix of humor and wisdom, the acceptance of a man who's made peace with change, but will never fully say goodbye to what made him whole. In many ways, Alan Jackson's story reminds us that real legacy isn't about staying on top forever, it's about what remains when you finally step away. His music, his character, and his humility will outlast any tour or trophy, and that might be the most powerful goodbye of all. Even though Alan has made peace with slowing down, the truth is that his fight with Charcot-Marie tooth disease is far from over. It's not something that disappears with time, it's something he'll live with for the rest of his life. The condition affects muscle strength and balance, making even simple movements unpredictable. For a man who's spent his entire life performing with grace and precision, that's not an easy reality to accept. Alan has said the disease isn't going to end his life, but it will continue to change it. Some days are better than others. Some days the weakness is subtle. Other days it reminds him that time is no longer on his side. Yet even in those moments, he doesn't complain. That same quiet strength that carried him through decades of fame now carries him through something much more personal. Behind the scenes, his friends say that Alan still writes songs from time to time. Sometimes he'll sit with his guitar and play a few chords, just to see if the spark is still there. The voice may tremble a little, the fingers may not move the way they used to, but the heart, the part that made those songs timeless, is still as strong as ever. Fans have begun to wonder what comes next. Will there be one final studio album? Maybe a collection of unreleased songs? Some believe he's already recording quietly at home, just for himself, keeping that creative fire alive away from the public eye. Others think his final performance in Nashville will double as a live album, a way to preserve the last chapter of his story for generations to come. Whatever happens, one thing is certain: Alan's legacy isn't fading, it's evolving. His goodbye isn't a sudden exit, it's a gentle fade, the kind that feels natural, even poetic. And the beauty of it all is that he's in control of the story. He's choosing how it ends. For his fans, that's both comforting and heartbreaking. They understand that this is a man who gave everything he had to the music, and now, after all those years of giving, he's finally keeping something for himself. There's a quiet dignity in that decision, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful endings aren't loud or dramatic, they're honest. As Alan looks ahead, it's clear he's not just saying goodbye to touring, he's saying goodbye to a way of life. But that doesn't mean he's done leaving a mark. The truth is, legends like him never really disappear. They simply step out of the spotlight and let the music do the talking. Alan Jackson's story isn't just about country music. It's about resilience, humility, and the strength it takes to face change with grace. From a small-town dreamer in Georgia to one of the most respected names in country history, his journey has been a reminder that true success isn't measured by fame. It's measured by how deeply you touch people's lives. He built his career on honesty, in his lyrics, in his performances, and in the way he carried himself. And that honesty is exactly what makes this goodbye so powerful. It's not a headline, it's not a show, it's a man looking back at his life and quietly saying, "I did what I came here to do." For fans, it's a bittersweet moment. They're losing the chance to see him live, but they're gaining something far more lasting: the legacy of a man who stayed true to his roots, his values, and his sound. His songs will keep playing long after the final concert ends, and that's how legends live forever. Maybe that's the lesson Alan Jackson leaves behind, that even when time changes everything, when fame fades, when the lights dim, what really matters is what you gave to the world while you were here. And in that sense, Alan hasn't lost a thing. He's simply passing the torch to those who'll carry the music forward. So as the curtain slowly closes on one of country music's most genuine voices, we're left with gratitude. Gratitude for the songs that told our stories, for the words that felt like home, and for the man who gave them life. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching and honoring the legacy of Alan Jackson. If you'd like to see more stories that celebrate the icons who shaped the world of music and film, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and stay tuned for what's next. Because even when the music changes, the stories behind it never fade.